Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Phillip Siddiq Show. This is an interview, I'm telling you, I was just tossing and turning thinking about it to see if this guy's going to psychoanalyze me on the air. But we have with us Dr. Sasha Bardey. I got it right?
You got it right.
Perfect.
Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you here. Co-producer of the film Side Effects. All-star cast, twists and turns. We're going to get into his career and what it's like to produce this particular film. Glad you're on the show again.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
How did you get involved with a forensic psychiatrist? Tell us a little bit about that.
I started off medical school wanting to be a surgeon, but that turned out to be too much about single organs or procedures. Psychiatry is where you got to know your patient. And then when I trained at Bellevue, the place that had the sickest patients, the most psychotic patients, was the prison ward. So I ended up working on the prison ward for about a decade, evaluating dangerous, psychotic, depressed, and people that were just faking it to try to get out of their legal charges. And I fell in love with that investigative aspect of the job. In other words, you had a crime, oftentimes you had a body, a murder,
yes,
and you had to try to figure out why that person had killed that individual. And you had to look into the past, into their lives, their psychiatric history, work history, personal history, substance abuse history, examine the interaction between the victim and the perpetrator, and then at some point it all falls together and you have your answer. And that was, and still is, an incredibly exciting procedure. Each time I get a new case, I'm excited, I jump into it, I want to find out what's going on. And so I was doing that at Bellevue when I met Z.Burns, who wrote and produced the movie. We became friends, and then that's got us started on, well, we need to turn this into a movie. We need to come up with a great psychological thriller in the kind of the old school, like the Hitchcockian sense of it. You know, not blood and guts,
right.
not a lot of cerebral stuff, and twists and turns and reveals, and we're not going to reveal anything right now.
No, we're not.
But you know, you see the movie and you'll see some great turns, like a roller coaster.
Right, now working with the actors themselves, I mean, Jude Law, was it
Rooney Mara,
Catherine Zeta-Jones, Jude Law, as you said. Was there ever part of you that said, well, I want to fucking psychoanalyze him, or, you know, just anything you could share with
Well,
us?
it's like an occupational hazard. I mean, I don't really go out of my way to analyze people, but people find out what I do and they're like, oh, am I saying something? What am I thinking? What's going on? Am I out of my mind? It's like, we're just having a conversation here. But what was amazing about all of the actors is they were very interested in either the illness they were portraying, or Catherine Zeta-Jones and Jude Law are both psychiatrists in what the role of a psychiatrist is, and the interaction, what is therapy, what are boundaries. They were fascinated by trying to understand the nature of those relationships. And they worked really hard, spent a lot of time in my office, talking to my colleagues, to try to get a real feel for what that interaction is like. And I think as a result, you see it portrayed in the movie in an accurate way.
Right.
And I think this movie, Soderbergh and Scott did a great job of creating a very realistic backdrop against which this thriller can play itself out.
And I think some people with medical backgrounds will see that, the realization. I mean, and speaking of, let's say, the drugs, I don't know, pushing drugs is the wrong term, but you get to see like some of the background of, well, here's a pen for my particular company. Can I use this? Sure, go ahead.
Right.
You know, so you've been to those conferences. I mean, that is like quote, real life.
That's real life, and that's changing now because there's some awareness now that the public has that pharmaceutical companies were probably going too far in roping doctors into prescribing their medications. I mean, years ago they were the expensive trips, the lavish dinners. All that's been to a large extent cut back. It's almost gone now. But it is part of our history, and it's something that we need to deal with, and something that we portray in the movie accurately. We've shown the movie to a lot of doctors. We screened it in New York to a lot of doctors from NYU. Yesterday we screened it for the Northern California Psychiatric Society. And I was anxious, my colleagues judging, my input in this movie, and I have to say, not one of them really raised their hand and said, you know what, that's inaccurate. I mean, there's some poetic license, it's a movie, but technically, I think we're pretty spot on.
Very good. Yeah, but I heard you got a couple of hot questions there, but you handled yourself gallantly is what I heard.
Well, an interesting thing that came up, which was, is the trailer somehow misleading people into believing that psychiatric medications are bad? And I was at a bit of a loss. I'd never heard of a trailer being in any way kind of toxic to anybody. Maybe a movie is controversial, but a trailer, that kind of threw me off.
Yeah, well, I guess people will see it, and trailers are designed just to get you into the theater, and they'll take what they want from it until they see the whole entire film, the arc of the story. Okay, now I know why they put that in this particular trailer.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Now, have you had any cases that just left you tied up in knots before we get to Law and Order, SVU, and criminal intent, because you also worked with them? So.
Oh, sure. And there was in fact, this is an old case that I had shared with some of the details without revealing too much with Scott. That inspired some of the scenes in the movie, and it was a guy in his 50s who was a predatory pedophile who would take out ads pretending to be a sculptor. He would take out ads that he would pay parents to bring him their children so he could sculpt them. And he wasn't sculpting them. He was videotaping him doing all sorts of horrible things. And he pretended to be ill. And he pretended that he was psychotic at the time, and he was hearing voices. And we were able to break through that. And that was one of the really first times, this was a while ago in my career, where I had encountered evil. I had encountered someone that really made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Someone who was just out there to hurt people, and in this case, children. Which really, it's hard to maintain professional neutrality when it comes to kids.
Yeah,
but you do it. I mean, it's my job, but still, part of you kind of goes, "This is bad. This is really bad."
Now, when you're at home, I mean, you're closing the door on all of this, let's say the movies, and working with those type of people. How do you shut that off and then become dad?
You got to compartmentalize. I mean, part of being a doctor is you're trained for that. Whether you're a cardiac surgeon or whether you're doing autopsies or, no matter what field of medicine you're in, a big part of your training is to develop the ability to put it in a box and to leave it alone when you're not working. Because otherwise, how can you be an oncologist working with patients, who a large number of whom will not make it? You got to be able to put it in a box, and you learn that. And sometimes it's hard. Sometimes cases get to you, and that's why you talk to your colleagues or you have your own therapy, and you make peace with it. But it's part of our training,
Right. Okay. All right. Well, I guess we're going to put a wrap on the interview here. Side effects of film. Go out and see it, and it's been our pleasure to have a real forensic
psychiatrist.
See, I'm worried about what I'm going to say. See, he's going to psychoanalyze me and look back on me and everything else. See?
Something in your past you're not telling us, huh?
No, it's not. We're going to interview right here, everybody, but thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.